They smiled for the cameras, completely unaware that the predator staring back had already decided to kill them. These 3 tourists were already dead the second their safaris began. They just didn't know it yet. The first case begins in a place designed to make people feel secure around animals that should never feel familiar. Lion Park near Johannesburg, South Africa, offered exactly the kind of experience tourists pay for. Open views, close encounters, the chance to photograph a predator from inside a vehicle and go home, believing you brushed the edge of the wild without ever really entering it. For 29-year-old Catherine Chappelle, an American editor who had worked on major productions including Game of Thrones, that experience turned fatal in seconds. On June 1st, 2015, Chappelle was riding through the park in a vehicle with the window open. Reports say she was photographing lions. The guide was driving slowly. Nothing about that scene would have looked alarming to a tourist in the moment. The lions were near, but not too near. The vehicle was moving, but not fast. It probably felt like the kind of risk the park itself had already accounted for. That detail changed everything, because the most dangerous part of a safari is often not the animal. It is the trust the setting creates. Then the lioness came in from the side. Witnesses and park officials said the animal lunged through the open passenger window and attacked Chappelle before anyone could react. The guide tried to intervene and was injured. Emergency services were called. It was too late. Chappelle died at the scene. A photograph later emerged showing the lioness moments before the attack, as if the camera had captured the final calm frame before the illusion vanished. That alone would have been horrifying, but what made it worse was how preventable it seemed. The park had rules about keeping windows closed. The danger was not hidden. It was printed, posted, and known. Yet the safari model itself blurred the line between proximity and safety. It told visitors they could get close enough for the perfect image and still remain protected. Chappelle's death triggered global outrage because it exposed the most uncomfortable truth about predator tourism. A vehicle is only a barrier if everyone treats it like one, and that is where the story widened. This was not deep wilderness. This was a managed safari environment, an attraction built around controlled risk. But a lion does not recognize management. It recognizes access. One open window turned a guided drive into a fatal encounter, and one moment of human trust became the exact opportunity the animal needed. If the first case was about trust inside a park, the second was about trust in a guide, a route and a routine that had probably felt ordinary many times before. In March 2024, a group of tourists was on a morning game drive in Kafue National Park, Zambia. They were riding in an open safari vehicle operated by Wilderness, one of the best-known safari companies in Africa. This was not an unlicensed backroad tour. This was a professional safari in one of the continent's iconic wildlife destinations. The victim was Gail Matson, a 79-year-old tourist from Minnesota. She was on what should have been a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Then the elephant appeared. According to the safari company and multiple reports, a bull elephant emerged from woodland and charged the vehicle. The guide tried to accelerate away. For a moment, that may have looked like enough, but elephants do not need long. This one caught the truck, struck it with force, and flipped it over. Video from the incident spread online almost immediately, and that footage is what made the case so disturbing. The charge was not cinematic from a distance. It was direct, fast, and brutally final. 1 second, the guests were seated and filming. The next, the vehicle was rolling. Gail Matson died from her injuries. 5 other people were hurt, though most survived with minor injuries and trauma. The company said the guide had attempted evasive action, but there was simply not enough room or time once the elephant committed. That detail matters. People often imagine safari deaths happening because someone stepped out of a vehicle, ignored a warning, or broke a rule. In this case, the tourists were exactly where they were supposed to be. And still, one aggressive bull elephant turned a guided excursion into a fatal disaster. But what made it even worse was the timing. The attack happened in daylight on an organized drive, in a setting built around the idea that expert guides reduce the danger to something manageable. That belief is usually true. Usually. But safari safety depends on something no company can fully control. The decision an animal makes in a single second. Once that elephant chose to charge, all the layers people trust on safari, training, distance, vehicles, experience, collapsed into impact physics and panic. Then the case took another turn. It did not remain a one-off shock for long. Zambia would soon see more fatal elephant incidents involving tourists that same year, forcing the tourism industry and wildlife authorities to confront a reality nobody likes advertising. Some safari deaths are not the result of stupidity. They are the price of entering a landscape where a 6-ton animal can still overrule every precaution. And that brings us to the third case, which may be the most unsettling of all because it happened in a place where tourists had already been taught to feel awe before fear. In July 2018, 2 Taiwanese tourists were visiting the Lake Naivasha area in Kenya, a region known for wildlife lodges, water views, and close encounters with large animals. Hippos are common there. They're also among the deadliest large animals in Africa. But to many visitors, they do not look like predators. They look slow, heavy, almost comic from a distance. That misunderstanding has killed many people. One of the tourists, 66-year-old Changming Chuang, reportedly approached the water to photograph a hippo near a resort area. A second tourist, Wu Peng Te, was also nearby. Witnesses said they came too close. The hippo charged. What happened next was quick and devastating. The animal bit Chang in the chest and fatally injured him. Wu was also hurt but survived with minor injuries. Chang was rushed to hospital, bleeding heavily, but later died. Wildlife officials later killed the hippo. The headlines were shocking because the attack happened near accommodation, not out on an extreme expedition. The familiar setting made the violence feel even more sudden. That detail changed everything. People hear safari and imagine a jeep surrounded by lions on an open plain. But some of the deadliest safari encounters happen at the edges, near camps, lodges, water, and the spaces where tourists let their guard drop because the adventure already feels processed into hospitality. A hippo does not care whether you are at a 5-star lodge or on a raw riverbank. If you are too close, the outcome can be exactly the same. The deeper you look into hippo attacks, the more disturbing the pattern becomes. They are territorial in water, fast on land, and capable of crushing force that most tourists do not appreciate until it is too late. Changming Chuang did what countless travelers do every year. He tried to get closer for the shot. That instinct is so ordinary it feels harmless. On safari, it can become a death sentence. And that is the thread connecting all three of these cases. Catherine Chappelle trusted the barrier of a safari vehicle with an open window. Gail Matson trusted that a guided drive in a professional reserve would keep the danger at a distance. Changming Chuang trusted that a familiar lodge setting and a slow-looking animal meant he still had time to close the gap for a better photo. In every case, that trust was shattered. What makes safari deaths so haunting is not just that they happen, it is where they happen. These are not always stories of people charging into the wild with no caution. Often they are stories of tourists doing what the setting quietly encourages them to do. Relax, observe, lean in, believe the risk has already been managed for them. That is why the aftermath lingers. Because once you see how these incidents unfold, the threat no longer looks dramatic. It looks ordinary right up until the second it is not. A lion through a window. An elephant overturning the vehicle meant to protect you. A hippo near a lodge, close enough to seem photographable and far enough to seem safe. Each one began with the same calm rhythm every safari relies on. Slow drive, quiet watching, camera raised. Then the animal moved, and the whole structure of safety gave way at once. That is the moral nobody wants printed in the brochure. Safari tourism sells proximity to danger while promising that danger will remain interpretable, containable, almost curated. Most of the time it does, but when it fails instantly. And when it fails around an apex predator or a massive territorial herbivore, the tourists inside that moment are often dead, long before the rest of the group understands what they are looking at. That is why these stories matter, not as shock clips, not as proof that safaris are reckless, but as reminders that nature does not sign the contract the tourists think they bought. The vehicle, the guide, the lodge, the park map, the camera lens, none of that changes what the animal is. It only changes how close humans feel comfortable getting before the truth reappears. And when that truth reappears, it is always the same. The wild was never under control. It was only being tolerated for one more second. Tell me which case disturbed you most. The lioness at Lion Park, the elephant in Kafue, or the hippo at Lake Naivasha. Because the next time we look at safari deaths, we are going even deeper into the moments when tourists stepped out, leaned in, or stayed still. 1 second too long, and the animal in front of them made the final decision.